early stuff was just killer.
Selling for sale?
I sold it.
So you're just showing me a beautiful object.
Well,
and then I can't buy it.
I have two. I have two that are from him. I just wondered if he was in your knowledge base.
Yeah, I've talked to somebody about that actually.
Okay. Because I have two more available, but they're almost too weird for you, I think. But he's good.
Don't. Nothing's too weird for me, Robert.
All right.
Huh?
All right.
We got Robert Sommers here. Robert.
Hey.
We've known each other, what, 30 years maybe?
Maybe a little longer.
Could be. Yeah, probably. Actually, we have, I think. And we've done a podcast. This was 7 years ago or something. And you're a lot happier now.
Yeah. What happened?
What happened, man? I said to you, he just walks in. So first of all, he doesn't call. We're going to do a podcast. We've talked to another one. He just shows up. And I'm like, okay, well, we're still going to do the podcast. We're going to clear the books and go. But yes, I said to you, you're the happiest I think I can ever remember. Any insight for the people who actually know Robert Sommers and go, yeah, he seems pretty happy?
It's usually all about money.
That's it. That is it?
For me.
Yeah, because you have 4 good shows in a row.
I had 4 good shows in a row, which is an anomaly. So I just came back from my Inquit trip to Round Top, Texas, which I did not want to go to because I'm not a huge fan of long distance driving.
Okay.
And the last trip to Texas just about killed me, but I had a very great show at Round Top and several other great shows. So it's nice when, I'm not scrambling.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize that. They think that, I think sometimes that the art profession is, champagne and parties. And the reality is for you, especially in this, it was 2 weeks by yourself doing a booth with a 5-day setup. It's a lot of work. It's a massive amount of work. A 40-foot booth, in fact, you had, right?
80 foot.
80 foot, sorry. I don't even know what that means. So big. And you did it by yourself. Had you done Round Top before?
Never. Leslie and I had driven through Round Top in 1995, and we had done Brimfield, gone there to shop.
Yeah.
And you could never have enough money at Brimfield. There were so much stuff, round tables of Jensen jewelry just piled in mountains.
Right.
But when we went through Round Top in 1995, I couldn't find one thing to buy.
Wow.
17 miles of antique shows, because I'm a very particular guy. So
you say that, you are particular in the sense of you have good taste and you know what you're looking at, but you're a generalist. You're like me. I mean, you know a little bit about everything.
I say that my knowledge base is a mile wide and a 1/16 of an inch thick. So, yeah, okay. I can reach into a lot of different genres.
Yes, you can.
I don't always, I make mistakes all the time, but they're aggressive mistakes.
Define that. What does that mean?
Well, I would say that I will shoot first. I made 2 mistakes this week.
Okay.
And I bought a Bodmer print that turned out to be bad. It was $100. Now, I could have made $1 zillion, and all that money I made means nothing. The fact is I wasted $100 on something that I shouldn't have.
Does that stick with you?
Yeah. Losses feel worse than winning feels good because I have such high standards.
Yeah.
And I think that, man, you shouldn't make those dumb things. But I do. We all do. If you're going to be shooting, you're going to miss once in a while.
But that's not even making a mistake, in my opinion. That's saying this is a 10x, 50x, whatever, and could be not. I don't have enough knowledge base to maybe make that decision on the spot, but I have $100 in my pocket, and I don't mind trying that. If it doesn't,
right,
then you'll probably still even get your $100.
It's still
out, right?
a nice decorative.
You can still get. You'll probably still make money on your.
Well, that was the first mistake of the week. The second mistake, and I mean, I had a tremendous week.
Yeah.
But what am I talking about?
I know
the losses.
Okay.
As I bought an umbilical fetish because I never had one, and they're so cool.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
But I just showed it to Higgins. He went, "No, wrong beads, wrong date."
Yeah. Yeah.
So beadwork is a thing unto itself.
Correct.
And you can't gain knowledge without an awful lot of mileage in most of the fields we work in.
Everything. You have to make mistakes to be able to learn because if you don't make the mistakes, it doesn't stick.
Right.
So, but you spend $100. I bet you'll never buy another Bodmer like that.
Exactly.
without thinking about it. And as you were saying before you came onto this show, this is your 50th year in the art business.
Correct.
So, all right. And
Yeah.
so that
Watershed year.
Yeah, I think that's what I want this podcast to be about in some respects, is because we've had you have a very interesting background. I still remember it was about real estate and all the things that happened and how well you had done and how things could go bust and all this stuff. And lots of health issues, massive different health issues. But let's focus on this 50 years of being what you would consider an art dealer. So when did you start?
The first art I ever bought was from, do you know Gordon McClellan? He wrote all the books on Millard Sheets and Phil Dyke, and
Yes,
he wrote a lot of books on California watercolors,
Yes.
Orange, Great Labels.
Yes.
Well, my first love in the art business was psychedelic art, and I think I told you.
I bought something from you kind of like
Right.
that.
And
I still have that.
Right, and I was a big collector of Rick Griffin's work.
Yeah.
And
That's what I got, I think.
And Gordon was Rick's agent back then. So in 1975 at the El Cortez Hotel, I bought my first cache of Rick Griffin work, and a lot of it I still have. And I assembled the greatest collection in the world at one time. Unfortunately, through economic problems, I had to sell some of the album covers, but I really loved his work. He was a hero. He was a great friend of mine, ultimately, before he died in 1991. So that was the first stuff I bought, and it was underground art. I helped put Zap Comics together with him, with the last couple issues. I met Crumb. I met all the great luminaries of that world.
Right.
And I loved underground art, and I really enjoyed psychedelic art, and I supplied artwork to the Grateful Dead for Rick. I flew to San Francisco and sat with Jerry Garcia and brought him paintings, and it was just such a thrill to meet my hero, Rick Griffin, and get involved in art at that time. So
what year would have that been?
1975.
Okay.
So I that's what brought me into the business, and then I ultimately just started selling the stuff off when I had to, and became an art dealer.
And so when you started in 75 and you're would you say you're representing Griffin's?
No, I'm just like the principal patron.
Got it. Okay. So, but you're putting a huge group together.
Yes.
One of which I have from your
great.
collection. You probably don't remember it, but you sold me something years ago.
Good.
And from your collection, I said,
Excellent.
I'll just keep that. I have it.
Nice.
So, maybe I now know where to go if I ever need to sell something.
Exactly.
But so you collect, you have this, you're really into psychedelic art. And paintings and working with the artists that are doing it, right?
Correct.
And what was that event with Jerry Garcia that you were trying to do? That was with the artist?
That was, Rick couldn't come. So I lugged the artwork for the Radio City Music Hall tour to San Francisco. He was in the Warfield practicing on a little chair in a building. And he loved it, and just showed him a bunch of drawings, and I commissioned a piece for Rick that eventually became the Reckoning album cover. I spent 4 days up painting this thing with him, or watching him paint, and it was just beguiling and wonderful. And so,
were you still doing real estate stuff then at that point?
I was doing real estate, and I was also painting.
Okay.
Because I was an architecture major, as you know, and was, you may not know that when Leslie and I started in this business, we were selling mine paintings.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, and then when I got my cancer, the doctor said, I lost my right kidney, and I had a nephrectomy and bladder cancer from a very rare bladder cancer that these women in Japan get for dipping their mouth and their brushes in their mouth. And the doctor said, you've got to get away from solvents and you can't paint anymore.
Oh.
That's when I segued over to photography, because I couldn't scratch that Art Jones anymore.
Yeah, but you needed to.
I will tell you, in my opinion, my early training as an artist has helped me so much as an art dealer.
In what way?
Knowing what composition is, knowing what color is, knowing what is a successful painting.
Yeah.
I critique a lot of art. I have another critique next month, and I often say that if you don't have an extremely narcissistic view of your own ability to judge art, you have no business being in this business. We all have to be really
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah, I've never thought of it in those terms, but yeah, there's definitely a thread of truth. At least I wouldn't say, I don't know if you have to be narcissistic, but you have to have confidence in what you like and dislike.
Exactly. Anyone can be a signature hunter,
Yeah,
but many artists
right.
have bad days, as you know.
Yeah,
So it's up to you and me to tell you if this is a good example or
right.
not.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, signature hunter is somebody who's, I call them headhunters, and they're just keyed in on the name. I need Maynard Dixon on my thing. I need, whoever it is, they want the name.
And everyone they find has got to be the greatest one ever painted.
Well, that would be nice if they did that, but generally,
But that's what they think.
What I find is they generally don't care about the art so much. It's literally just focusing on the name.
Exactly.
And generally, those collections, when they're put together, are mediocre, or
Exactly.
worse,
Or worse.
depending. Or often, I've seen they got the signature, but guess what? Actually, the painting isn't even correct, and neither is a signature.
Exactly.
So I see this all the time when people buy things online. They'll try to buy Maynard Dixon or something, and they're just literally, well, it says Maynard Dixon, and it's like, yeah, but anybody can write the word Maynard Dixon. It's clearly not his. Wrong date, wrong time, wrong everything. So becoming an advocate for yourself through dealers is very helpful. Of what is correct and what isn't is very important if you want to collect art. Learn, spend the time, go talk to artists, go live with artists, do what you did, make art, which you did. So that gives you, and I have never done that like you did, so that gives you an advantage in that field of having done art and then doing photography. And so you're interested in the psychedelic stuff, artists, things. You're doing it, you're succeeding. What propels you from going, okay, I could just make this my line? Because I could have seen that's just a really great niche that you could have made your whole career out of.
It got boring.
Okay, that's it. Got it. Yeah, it's too little.
I grew up in a house where my father had a tremendous art collection. I just sold one of his Van Dycks. We sold a Joshua Reynolds. He had a Peter Lely, wonderful European court painting. So I was exposed to really good art. And I don't know. I'm going to tell you something that I feel. The worst thing that can happen to an artist is to get really good at something, because many of them, because of the commercial success, they stop growing. They never keep moving. They never grow as artists because people demand the same thing from them over and over again. And to me, one of the greatest modern artists is Wayne Thiebaud, because he never stopped growing.
Boy,
he never stopped looking at color and shadow and how to approach things differently. But there's very few artists that will push themselves. But I think a true artist has to. When I was painting, I was never satisfied. I was always pushing. I was neurotic about my art. And I think you really, if you're churning them out, and I could name some names, but I'm not going to do it.
No, I wouldn't.
But there's people who've gotten very good, and they've gotten these great, great people, and they've stopped.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, I think. When you get the money, sometimes that does allow you to I think, try other things. And, I've worked with artists now for 35 years, and I see how difficult their lives are, how hard it is to just make, enough money to pay for all the things you have to pay for. So I get it if they find something that really works to want to hammer on it. And then there's also, when they make it, if they make it, but the ones that do make it, there is yes, they have the ability to do like Wayne Thiebaud, like I said, I agree with that. But some of them also, it's hard to give up that lifestyle too.
Exactly.
And they know the other stuff sells.
So when did they stop becoming artists at that point, Mark?
So I think they're still artists. I do, because, they're creators.
Right.
And even I believe that those that don't maybe push the boundaries, I think they do in little ways that maybe most people couldn't recognize with color changes, palette changes, different views of the way they see the subject matter. Fairly small, but enough to keep them excited and creative. And then some just don't. Some just do.
I read a review yesterday about the new Thomas Kinkade movie, and it was really interesting because I saw Kinkade 20 years ago in Bonhams that was breathtakingly beautiful.
Mm.
And it turns out that the guy started out doing extremely introspective works.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden he sold himself as the painter of light and developed this huge thing. But he was really, really capable of painting.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is, this is a subjective world we live in. What Mark Sublette and Robert Sommers thinks is good has no material. It has no validity to the person that has a house full of Marty Bells, because that's what they like, and there's no right.
Right.
So we have to. It's not our thing, but there's something for everybody in this great world of ours. It just may not be for us.
Yeah, and on the East Coast, they see the world quite differently in the big cities than we do, and that's fine. That's good. They can do their thing.
Exactly.
Right. We do our thing here. So, key is to have as much information, learn as much, understand our history, look as much art as you can, touch as much, and that brings us back to why did you quit just doing that? Because you got bored. Because there was not enough variation for this.
Right.
So what did you go into? And we're talking about, again, a 50-year time frame. You started at 75. What did you gravitate to doing?
Anything good.
But at that point, you don't know what good is, really. I mean,
I did know.
Because you grew up around.
And my mother was an antique dealer in Pennsylvania.
Oh, well, that makes a huge
for
difference.
30-something years.
Okay, so you had
I had a huge art history background.
Yeah, okay.
So I knew at least what appealed to me early on.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was huge. I mean, I emulated Hopper in college when I was painting.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Ashcan. I love gritty city stuff. So many things turn me on. There's so many artists that I loved. And I remember going to Foxley's gallery. Bill Foxley had a gallery in La Jolla for a couple years called the Foxfire Gallery. And he had, 6 Remingtons and 5 George O'Keeffes. I've never seen anything like it.
Right.
And there was this painting on the wall about this size, and it was a guy on a bucking bronco. The painting was $10,000, and I wanted this thing so bad, but I didn't have 10 grand. It was a guy you may have heard of named Maynard Dixon.
Yeah.
And you've heard of him, right?
I have.
And that painting ended up selling for $300,000, then $400,000. I don't even know what it ended up at.
Yeah.
But that was a painting went, wow, this Western stuff's pretty cool. And it was in Foxley's gallery.
What year was that?
I'm not sure, probably 80 or something like that.
That's interesting.
And I
know the painting.
Do you? Yeah. And I was just blown away by it and didn't really even have a conception of Dixon at that time, but knew that I loved that.
Yeah. So when you start becoming an art dealer, so your mom's an antique dealer.
Right.
And she's like full-time antique stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So she can give you some. Well, you probably went to antique shows and sat in her booth and did that kind of stuff as a kid, didn't you?
Not really, because I was on the other coast. She was I would check in and see her house, and we're in a whole different world.
Yeah. Did you call her and say, hey, I'm going to do this, give me some advice or
My mom was sort of a street antique dealer. If she had to pay more than $10 for something, this is ground up stuff.
Yeah.
And when Leslie and I started at the swap meets, and I told you in my last video, I've gone from being a retired millionaire to having a huge sum of money stolen from my real estate company, winning a unanimous jury verdict, not being able to get the funds back, and someone saying, well, take a card table out to the Rose Bowl and see what you could do.
Right.
Okay. So resetting that, I went out there and I told Leslie, honey, I figured something out. If you spend hundreds, you make hundreds. If you spend thousands, you make thousands. And I am not going to die out here on the pavement. We're going up. And pretty soon, I was really into Mexican silver then, when Spratling and Aguilar were in their heyday.
Right.
And certain parties were fighting each other for great pieces. And I started having things out there that people just, did not have.
Right.
Richard Shaw ceramics and just fabulous pieces. And then I realized it was just not going to work for me outside anymore.
Yeah, just working at mainly the Rose Bowl.
Rose Bowl, Long Beach.
Yeah.
That
yeah, which, I mean, there's people that make an entire career out there.
Right. And I said, we're not dying on the pavement.
We're not going to.
They're not hauling me out with a tow tank. So we ended up going to Tawny Brewston's Modern Time show in Glendale. And I think that was my first indoor show, and then just taking
What year was that?
I don't really
Was
recall.
this kind of the early 80s?
80s, yeah.
Early or mid 80s?
Mid 80s.
Okay, so you say, okay, let's start doing shows. And shows being antique shows primarily?
Right.
And were you...
I started doing the Cy Miller shows and the Delmar show and
those.
Boosty, things like that.
Those. And those are general antique shows.
General antique
right.
shows.
Well, you would handle, and still do to some extent, right? Kind of everything that was of interest to you.
Right. Now, actually, the first show I did was the PMA show for psychedelic art in San Mateo. That was way back, way before everything. It was the first psychedelic poster show.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
Yeah, because you got the bug. You saw it.
Yeah.
You said, oh, this is interesting. This is fun. And you probably ran around
and I know this
bought stuff, right?
Right.
And made money. I mean, I think that's the addictive part, too, to some extent, as you go to a show like that. And you're doing it as a vendor, but you go and you find other things. You go, oh, I can make money on that.
Absolutely.
And you buy it, and then you take it to your booth, and you sell it for some amount over that, generally. And that's very addictive.
As you know, I have an eidetic photographic memory, and it's been so helpful.
Yeah. People in our business have generally really good visual memories.
Right.
That they can put an image with a price or an image with some bit of information that helps you. Generally, I think it's image to price, and you can remember, oh, that should be, I saw that for this or that. And
exactly.
And then using databases now, you can just do it.
And knowing about lots of different artists.
Yeah, you have to.
And there's so many great artists in so many different fields. It's interesting. I followed the Grateful Dead around in my youth. I went to a lot of Winterland shows and shows across the country. And I met a documentarian from Massachusetts last week when I was in Texas. And he's doing a documentary called Fare Thee Well about the similarities between being a Deadhead and on the road there and antique dealers. So I gave him an interview about, being on the road and the fact that I could go to Winterland and know 3,000 people by name at a Grateful Dead concert. Well, there's nowhere I can't go in the United States. And if I go to an antique show, I'm going to know a sizable amount of people there. Right. They're going to be my friends.
Yeah, and they'll know you.
The collegiality of this business is pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
Really. Think about how wide our world is.
Yeah, no, I mean, the people that I communicate with are artists and dealers. Those are the people that are mostly my friends or collectors that love art.
Right.
But
what a big family it is.
It can be.
Yeah,
and then, it's interesting to see how social media changes that too, because, your family can even expand more when people see you and understand you and, they get excited about what you're interested and passionate about.
I have really not engaged that much. I'm not a Facebooker and I'm not an Instagrammer.
So you're a writer, you're a blogger.
But I'm a blogger. But I gave that up 3 months ago.
I did not know this.
I gave up my blog, at least temporarily,
in
end of January, because things are so politically divisive. And if certain things happen politically, I said I did not want to be relegated to being a reactionary and having to keep score about things that I liked or didn't like happening with the country. So after in my 18th year, I'm on hiatus right now.
Yeah, maybe that's why you're so happy.
You know what? It's made me a lot happier.
Yeah.
Honest to God.
No, I get it.
Not being forced to keep score.
Right. You get rid of that vitriol.
Right.
And you can go, I see the world a little differently.
It's really not my job.
It's not your job. and you're probably not going to make...
Look at a laugh,
yeah,
Mark.
I know.
Don't you love it?
Yeah. I think that probably has something to do with it. And don't forget it. Write about something else.
Right. And I write about food and music, and I show my photographs, and
You love food.
right.
You're a real foodie.
I am a foodie.
Yeah, you're the most foodie person I've ever met.
Really?
True. Now, maybe I have a small
Are
world.
you just looking at my gut when you say that?
No, I'm not. I'm looking at your enthusiasm that you have and write for.
Right.
I mean, your conversation before we started this was about barbecue and how you went 3 hours out of your way to eat at somebody who recommended barbecue.
Right.
You might as well give it a plug to what it was.
Well, several years ago, Mike Bradford, who owns a barbecue in
he's
Spavinaw.
a barbecue expertise.
Right. Has he done a video here, Bradford?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had him?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Mike's a good friend of mine, and he sent me to to City Market in Luling, Texas, to try their barbecue. And it was like angels singing and la 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 la. Eating this brisket was like a religious experience. I had to smoke a cigarette afterward. So he said there's one place in Lockhart that's maybe better, and it's the oldest continuous run family barbecue in Texas, Black's, not to be confused with Terry Black's, which is across the street. So I headed out to Lockhart yesterday and showed up at opening, and there was a German film crew there that actually did an interview with me. And they said, "What'd you think?" And I said, "Good." And they looked at me, "Good?" They wanted to know how it compared. But it really was not as great. It was very good, but I was looking for Sublime.
Yeah,
I've been ruined for barbecue.
Yeah, it's hard to find Sublime. I mean, it's probably some of the Blacks that probably have some of the best barbecue in the world.
Exactly.
But you're looking for, okay, well.
My mom was an amazing person in New York. She was the editor of Pinnacle Books, and she would have lunch with Magritte's each and every Thursday. René Tavernier at Le Vaudor, French food. And when I was a kid, I was the only guy in the block that had to eat eggs and calves' brains. She was very, very much a gourmand.
Yeah.
And so I have a palate to good food.
And you understand that it has value, creative value.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
And I've started cooking, by the way, the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah. I'm baking now. My wife said she's cooked for 34 years. It's my turn. And and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's creative. It's super creative.
It is. And I like long, 4-hour, complicated recipes.
Oh, yeah.
And she's just done.
Isn't that so funny? I do the cooking, but I don't like 4-hour ones.
You do the cooking as well? Fantastic. Yeah. Isn't it fun?
I find it relaxing, actually. Things like chopping I find to be very meditative.
What's your favorite cuisine?
Well, Mexican food. Right?
See, for me, I lean Italian. I could eat Italian every meal.
I make homemade spaghetti every week, but I don't spend multiple hours making my sauce, but it's all original. It's all handmade.
Great.
So I do that.
Nice.
And I do grow my own herbs. So.
Beautiful.
But enough of that. I'm not a good cook. But I do appreciate somebody who can do that. And it does give you a better appreciation for what goes into making, a meal.
Sure.
From including buying it, all the stuff you have to go buy, because I do that too. And that, you picking out individual fruits and tomatoes and, avocados and just those little things, you want them to be perfect. So, which probably relates to how we do art.
And as you know, I live on a 5-acre farm, and I have about 100 orange trees and some beautiful avocados. I have Fuertes, the best avocado in the world.
Oh, wow.
And you get a lot of friends when the Fuertes are ripe.
When do they come? When do they go out?
They're ripe right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Good.
Remind me to show you some pictures.
I don't want pictures. I want the avocado. Okay, so you start this business. Again, we're back into it's a 50-year journey for you, and we're not even halfway through the journey. So you start doing these shows, and you're successful, I assume, pretty much right off the crack of these different antique shows.
Success in this business for me is about turning wonderful things. Now, I turned a Maynard Dixon early on that became a frontispiece for one of Jerry Speeder's books of a Navajo on a horse, beautiful color sketch. I've sold a John Singer Sargent that was in the London exhibit of 1912. I mean, I look at my career based on some of the absolutely incredible things I've sold, the Granville Redmonds. So, yeah, I managed to locate absolutely stunning pieces, both the Native American and in paintings. One of the dealers last week said, it's just not fair. You could talk to a rock. I'm a communicator, and it's been great, and I've been able to pry some things out. So I judge my career not by how much money I've made, and we all did really well for a long time, and then there's downtimes. But I tell people, most antique or art dealers love stuff more than money. And
That's true.
If I was rich, I would be broke.
Yeah.
Because I would own an Edward Hopper and I would just sell my soul for it, you know, or an N.C. Wyeth or one of these guys that I absolutely love. So money is immaterial. What success means for me is being able to pay my bills every month and keep the thing going. And so to have it go in its third or fourth or fifth decade and manage to keep this thing going and own a nice building, and which now gets to be appointment only, which I love for the last 15 years, maybe, I get to live life on my terms. And that is indicative of success to me. I tell people that antique dealers have two things in common generally, and this is a big, gross generalization, and I apologize, but we have problems with authority, and we're essentially unemployable. So to find a niche where I can do my thing and be happy and feed my family and buy a little real estate, it's a wonderful thing.
But you need to feel like you're the authority.
Correct.
And you can't take people telling you.
No.
Yeah. Well, it's good to understand what those personal, traits are.
When's the last time you had a boss?
Well, I've been married a long time.
No, not counting that one.
Yeah, it's been a very long time.
Right?
But, I mean, I was in the military.
Exactly.
And I was able to grind through that.
Exactly. But when you had your opportunity, guess what?
Yeah, and there were times that I did not agree with my people in charge of me and let it be known.
Isn't it nice to live in a world where we can lay out the parameters?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think I ever thought of it in those terms, though. Like, for me, I want to do this because I want to be my own boss. I didn't think of it in those terms. I literally thought, I just think, I enjoy doing this. I mean, retrospectively, you're probably exactly correct. But it wasn't, I've never really thought, that's why I went into it.
Do you know when I met you?
No, I don't think I do.
I think we were in Albuquerque doing a show, and I'm like, who's this guy going through my rug bags without asking me?
Oh, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I was a little aggressive.
But I liked you right off the bat.
I was aggressive, yeah. If you don't get in there and hunt,
exactly.
You got to get in there.
Yeah.
That's what it takes. Otherwise, you don't get it.
Exactly.
And I knew Bob Capris was around the corner somewhere. Just if I didn't get to a verse, he would.
Marin used to terrify me. And I've done shows all over the country. I've done great antique shows, but some of the big personas in the Indian business used to frighten me a little bit.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that was my first show. Was at Marin. I was still in the military. It's like 88 or 89, something like that. And I brought everything I owned, basically, and I had a killer show. And then I think somebody, and I don't remember who it was, told me, he goes, well, what did you buy? And I go, well, I didn't buy anything. I sold. I did great. Yeah, you didn't buy anything. Now what are you going to do, kid? I was like, I get it.
Exactly.
It's not really just selling. You need to be out there hunting to get replaced because it's easy to sell when you have a bunch of stuff, and probably I mispriced some things. Who knows, you know? And I'm somebody unknown. Like people are like, who is this guy? So they feel like there's probably going to be an advantage.
Me too.
And there probably was. I don't know.
So people go, God, what if you just sell out everything? And they don't understand that if you and I do a show, I know you were in Scottsdale Ferrari last week, and I think you did well.
Yeah, I did.
But if we do a show, we want to look good. It's not. We just can't bring yesterday's groceries. We better have something that's going to make us feel really good about ourselves. Am I correct?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I saved some things for that show.
Right.
Yeah, I had some things that had never been seen.
Right.
Because you also want to have that for the people that show up and take the effort to come, that, okay, here's something you couldn't have gotten if you just showed up to my gallery.
Think how extraordinary it is for the kind of money people are spending on a great piece of artwork from Medicine Man Gallery or the Blue Heron Gallery. They're never going to see that money again. Think of the responsibility and just what an amazing thing it is. Because some of these people, many of them are wealthy, but some of them aren't.
Right.
I've always said, there might be a school teacher who saved up for 2
true.
years or something.
Yep.
And they're just as important to me. But we have a duty, really, And but I am invested, very invested. I never want to look like a schlub at one of these shows.
I get that, actually. Yeah. No, I do understand that. Yeah, and I put time and energy into making that show reflect what I do and how I see the world. And I didn't just haphazardly throw it together. I thought a long time about what I wanted to bring and how I wanted to look. Now, I haven't done a show in probably 5 or 6 years.
I heard they sold out 3,000 opening night tickets.
Yeah.
And these were not cheap tickets.
No, that's right.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's this area, Arizona, is right for people to have a show for art.
The greatest show I ever did was at Scottsdale, Westworld. And when the Phoenix Art Museum, Ballinger was doing their thing.
Yeah, I did that show.
We had the tent, and David Dyke was there, Mark and Richard were there, George Stern was there, you were there. We had a murderer's row, and a guy came. I tasted Phoenix money for the first time, and it was big. I sold a Granville Redmond for $160,000. Yeah. I don't know that I've ever had a show with those kind of receipts, and I've always been, why hasn't it happened again?
Yeah, well, it did.
Something needs to happen, especially with High Noon leaving the state.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting that this particular show is different than any of those shows. It's because the world has changed and pivoted to some extent. So this was almost all contemporary.
That's what I hear.
All contemporary. And even the things I had were much more of a contemporary bent.
But Steve Stoops did the show with his historical stuff, and he did well, I think.
I haven't talked to him, but he always does well.
And Steve and I used to do FOTA, and we were the only people there doing historic artwork. Yeah. Everything else was new. Yeah. and it's real hard for me in that climate. We're telling someone why they should buy something that's got historical validity rather than the flavor of the week.
Yeah. Yeah, you would. It would be interesting to see what would happen if you brought it into that show.
They asked me to do the show, and I said, I'll do it, but I'm going to pack some paintings in. And he said, no way, we can't have that. And some of the dealers, I'm sure, could have 4 things on the wall, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't have the money to do that. It. Good for you.
And it looked like me.
Good for you, man. Yeah. That's how I would do it, too, but he wouldn't let me.
Yeah. No, I did. I'm not sure they expected me to do it, but whatever.
I'm glad you did.
I gave it some breathing room.
Good.
But not a lot.
Excellent.
Okay, so you do all these shows.
Right.
You start in this business. We meet. What year was that? Do you have any idea when I was scrounging through
87
your
or something
rug
like
bag
that.
Without me asking?
Late 80s.
Did I buy anything from you?
Yeah,
cool.
You buy from me.
Yeah, then you've
always bought from me.
Yeah, I do try to. Well, you got good stuff.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So you've been doing it long enough, and you've had a gallery, Blue Heron Gallery, for how many years?
The gallery's been open since 1997.
Okay, so long time, almost 30 years.
Right.
And the last 15, it's now by appointment only.
Correct.
But also in that time frame, you're doing these shows, and lots of them, not just one. you're doing multiple and a lot of antique shows too, right? And do you consider yourself an antique dealer, an art dealer, or something in between?
Something in between.
Okay, yeah. All right, that makes sense. I kind of think that's
I'm a kind of person that can find value in lots of things.
Yeah.
That's my
And enjoy
my
it.
magic power, right?
And enjoy it. Yeah.
And I don't like things getting stale. I mean, you go to a marketplace, even Long Beach, even the flea market, you have to expose yourself to the possibility of something new coming in. Now, I get a lot of calls for collections now, and it's nice. But I really like exposing myself to markets because you never know.
It's the hunt.
It's
the
the hunt.
finding it, yeah. No, I get it.
Let me veer off for a second because I'm a veerer. The great behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner said there's many types of rewards, but there are three principal rewards. The first reward is a constant reward. When the chimp pushes the lever, the cigarette comes down the chute.
Right.
Well, that gets real boring when you know that all you have to do is push the button and the thing comes through. There's another reward called a progressive reward where the stakes get bigger and bigger. Right. That's what gamblers are looking at. But what moves most of us is called an intermittent reward. The reward where we never know if there's going to be a pearl in the oyster or the treasure box somewhere, and there's going to be times when we find nothing. And that is what keeps us going.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
The fact that it may not work.
It's the dopamine hit when you get
exactly.
That. And it doesn't happen all the time, and you remember it when it does.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I get that. Most dealers that I know find the most enjoyment, especially if we're talking about old material and things like this, is in the buying. It's not the selling. Because once they get it, they know they're going to sell it and they'll do fine. It's the finding. I think part of that is it also reaffirms that you have a knowledge base that other people didn't see this kind of gem, whatever it might be.
It's a reaffirmation of our eye that we can select something that someone else may not have seen.
Yeah, and maybe patting our own egos.
Exactly.
Making us feel better.
It's an early atavistic response as hunter-gatherers to find that. And I'm sure you've noticed that when the old salt dealers come into Medicine Man Gallery, they don't want to see what's on the wall. They want to know what's in here behind a door somewhere.
Yeah, a lot of them do. Yeah, what do you got
right
there? Yeah.
What am I not seeing? How, right?
It's true. Well, that's the question. It's a good question to ask any, if you come to a gallery like mine, especially if you're looking for older material, it never hurts to ask, is there anything new in the back, or have you just got something in? And, we get something in every day.
But I think there's more joy for them.
Could be.
In that thing that's stuffed back there, because it's all about a treasure hunt.
Yeah, no. And we saw what Forrest Finn's did when he actually did a treasure hunt.
Right.
There's a movie out on it now.
Terrible.
Yeah, a lot of people died.
One of the problems I have with, when I first started picking seriously was 1993, and I was working for a financial research company, and I did every back road in America. This was pre-internet.
Right.
We had, there was nothing out there. We had to travel by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
And I think that data has flattened so many markets and availability. What all you have to do is punch it in and, there's 6 of them here or there. So it's really hard. So I think that exposing all your material, it's a double-edged sword for me because I'm selling to collectors that want to find something that's unobtainable.
Yeah. Which they do.
Which they do.
Yeah, because you get lots.
There's more satisfaction for them in knowing that. And that's why I like to sell privately or at least sell people to people versus just churning things out on the computer. It'd be tough for me.
Yeah. It's a different business model.
Right.
Yeah. I, on the other hand, I like that component of it, but I also like being able to find it, tell the story, the history. I love something that can tell a history.
And you do such a beautiful job of that, but I'm also betting that Mark Sublette likes to be close to someone and see their smile when they fell in love with something
Of
in
course.
person.
Well, that's why I have a gallery, right?
Exactly.
And I've been in the gallery for 33 years.
Right.
So if you don't like that, you're not in the gallery
Right.
business for very long.
But I've met people like that aren't comfortable around people and don't care about that, and
Yeah.
that wouldn't do anything for me.
They don't make it as a gallerist.
No, I wouldn't.
Or not a very successful one.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the joys is meeting individuals, talking to them, and for me again, because I like artists, is dealing with artists. I mean, that's the funny thing that's really changed.
I met your artist, Howard Post, when I was a couple of years in Santa Fe. What a great guy.
And there's nobody
You got
nicer.
Bill Anton, John Moyers. You have some of the nicest people I've met in this gallery. They're just wonderful human beings.
And to me, that's probably the greatest part of this
Big time.
business, which, when I started out was just not that primarily. I did buy from native artists right off the bat. I was buying, before I was even an art dealer, I was buying pottery from people like Luann Tafoya for my own collection. I loved, contemporary native art. And it's funny to see that completely go all the way around the circle. And now I'm like loving to get to collect more and more of living artists' work of all types, including, pottery and, weavings and the whole components. So
it's funny. I have always had a lot of contemporary artists ask me to represent them, and it's something that I can't do psychologically. I mean, I've sold some, but I always tell people that I'm not equipped, because if I don't sell for them, I feel like I've failed them.
it's hard.
It's
And
the
you do feel
rejection
that.
of feeling like I've let them down. It's easier to I sell dead guys.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, because you have to, you're supporting their family,
Sure.
their food, their
Look at Mark
everything.
Winter, what he does.
yeah.
Look how hard that would be.
It
Be
would be
the
hard.
man. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
But I think that's what he gets the most joy out of.
Right.
Is that component. So yeah, there's something.
I'm not cut out for it psychologically.
Yeah, it is a big responsibility. It's a bummer when you don't sell for your artists or whatever, especially if they give you a great show or whatever, and you feel really
They're wonderful
and
people.
they did their job, and now they're depending on you to do your job, and sometimes you just can't do your job. Things happen, whatever. You can't control stock market drops or whatever. I mean, that some things are just uncontrollable. So
I have a painting right now, and I'm not going to tell you the painting, but it's a consignment painting, and a man called me this morning. He said, it's been 6 months.
Yeah.
And you haven't sold it. And I said, I can solve every problem but lack of interest. There's very little I can do. I'll buy it for stock, but I can't manufacture it if people aren't feeling it. It's been to 10 shows. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a lot of shows.
Right?
Yeah, that's a lot of hauling too.
That's a lot of hauling. So they don't understand that there's got to be a willing buyer who's excited by it.
Right. Yeah. And it's also a little harder for you, possibly, after 10 shows to still have the enthusiasm for that piece.
And that brings up something else. This is Art Dealer 101, and I'm sure we've all been there. You've had the thing for umpteen years or months, and someone comes in and they're excited about it, and you discount it to the nth because you're tired of looking at it, and you could have gotten full pop at that second.
Yeah.
But because you've already dismissed it,
you
just give them the super deal that you didn't have to. Have you ever done that? I sure have.
So I guess I'm sure I've done things like that, but I think for me, I'm just excited when somebody now shows new interest into it.
That's wonderful.
And, it's going to bring me back to the piece as well, whether they buy it or not. And all of a sudden that object seems to take on a new life on its own. And I've noticed that.
So you're better at that than I am.
I don't know, but
I think that I heard it's self-defeating, but I will give someone a super deal on something that I'm tired of looking at. I could make more money on it.
I think that objects have mana. I think they have a energy level of some type.
Big time.
And so certain things people haven't looked at I've had things they haven't looked at for a year or two, and all of a sudden one person, then another, and then that, it's like, okay, this is the thing now. This is
Well, we have a saying in the business. last thing to come in, first thing to go out. Things get an old, stale smell on them also. So it's just interesting. Now, I sold stuff in Texas this week that I thought they'd be throwing in my coffin with me. And people were just delighted. And it was just great.
And it's a different market.
And it's a different market.
Right. So they see the world differently than you
Exactly.
have developed that. Oh, this is not good.
Right.
This is not, this is there. It's going in my coffin. That's pretty dark, right? That's about as dark as you can get.
I tend to sell things through historical context.
Yes.
How does something fit in? I can tell you what the guy ate for dinner in May of 1927, right?
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it's about form and color still.
Mm-hmm.
And that's equally valid. It's a visceral experience.
Yeah.
So you just let them go. You like it?
Right.
Credit card or check?
Not cash?
Cash will work too.
Yeah. All right. So 50 years in the business.
Correct.
That's
scary.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I'm so young. How did that happen?
Yeah, just hard work. Started early. You started earlier. How do you see, let's just say, the antique business and to some extent the Native American business, because you deal in both, how has that changed and where is it headed?
Well, let's just say this. Let's look at a couple of businesses. Let's look at pre-Columbian. It's fallen on its face.
Yeah.
Or African. Now, and I wrote about this 20 years ago. I saw it coming. Our great buyers were in their 70s back then, and they had all the institutional knowledge, say Oriental rugs, okay? And they had children that had absolutely no interest in the material.
Right.
I have not seen still the majority of buyers for great things that I sell are in their 70s or 80s, I would say. And I have not seen a huge amount of interest from the younger generation. There's some, and I hope that you can contradict me on this, but it seems like after the great decline in 2008, when everything went on its head, I bought a bunch of non-objective abstraction. I was expecting the kids to step in and be interested, and I would try every different way I could. It was very, very hard to get them engaged. They are watching television shows that show a certain kind of art, a modernistic art in a monastic setting. Clutter all of a sudden, which we love, let's face it.
Really?
is right. Look around. Yeah. It's taboo now.
Yeah.
And that's a learned behavior. And so, they want psychologists to come in and cure you of this need to decorate and feather bed your nest. So it's become more difficult. It's become more difficult, and I don't know how it's going to turn. I don't know if suddenly some internal light's going to come on and these younger people can say, oh, it's cool. But, I used to write for Silver Magazine back in the 80s, and I've written for several magazines, and I've been in very academic positions in our world. And they stopped buying silver. They stopped buying china. I had someone tell me that many things that women have previously collected are just not collectible anymore. Many, many markets have fallen down and will probably never reappear.
Yeah, I think some of that I agree with. I mean, there are certain things, trends obviously are involved, but things like china. People don't have the same kind of weddings. They don't want china. They don't need those kind of things. Certain furniture, early American furniture has definitely fallen off.
I will also say that I feel good about my future. I feel like there's enough people out there that support what you and I are doing that I feel good for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I think that, and there's got to be some of us surviving and serving this thing, and I'm happy to be there.
Yeah, that's where I'm going, actually. So, you just had 4 of your best shows.
Right.
Somebody's buying. 4.
Exactly.
4. Your best.
And this last show, it was people in their 20s.
Exactly. Decorators. I was going to get to that. So you have all these decorators coming in. They're all young. They're all buying. They see the world differently. Native arts have changed because people are starting to actually appreciate contemporary indigenous art in a different way they haven't, which pushes not only contemporary but also historic material. I think that I see a very bright future, actually.
Great, wonderful.
Which is so interesting because,
and I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah, it's because I believe that the ability to reach individuals through medias like this, podcasts, and social media are so great. And people are inquisitive and curious, and they see things that they find interesting, or they find people like ourselves who are passionate about what we've done, and they go, well, that person's very interested in this.
And we've put the work in.
Yeah, we've put the work in, and they can see a route for them. There's somebody who's listening to this today who goes, I'm that guy that Robert is. I don't like people telling me what to do. I like to do my own thing. I have knowledge. I have good, visual memory. I like this stuff. Well, maybe there's a road for me here.
Exactly.
So I think the key is getting to apostolize what we've done and what we love and why we do it. And if you do that and you're relentless, like digging through the bag to get those rugs and your thing, if you're relentless at trying to let people see the glimpse of what you do.
I appreciate what you do, your videos. I mean, I've learned a lot from your videos. I mean, there's huge holes in my game. I don't know jewelry. Well, there's so many things that I don't
we all
do.
have holes.
But you've done a really wonderful job. I write curriculum for colleges. I don't know if you know that. I've been writing
Doesn't
for
surprise me, though.
University of Laverne for 20 years. I write books for teachers to get continuing credits, and many, 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 many courses I've developed. And people go, well, how can you write on dyslexia? How can you write on these topics? And I said, the teacher only has to be a chapter ahead of the students, and you learn enough to keep things moving and keep the dialogue going.
That's right. And that's why I put out information that I've learned over decades. So I'm not trying to hold it close to me.
Wonderful.
It's like, here it is. This is how I do it. Go forth.
And that's a public service because, once again, I won't name names, but there's people that hold this stuff very close to the vest in our world.
Till they die. And then it's lost. And that's a tragedy
to
do that. So I think that's part of what you have to do. I think it's a responsibility as a dealer in our field, especially if it's antique and historic material, is to put out all the information you have so people can not make mistakes and not buy a Bodmer for $100 when they're thinking it's whatever. There it is again. Yeah, but we'll remember it forever. So I think what we do as dealers, you and I and others, is going to continue to change, and fairly dramatically in the way it happens, because people die, and it'll be a new group that come in, I think, and see things differently, and we can't tell them what they should do, right? True. They have to see and look and feel, this is what I want to collect, and this other stuff I don't think we should be collecting now. This is maybe not appropriate.
Well, one of the things that's bothered me since 2008, which was the great shift for me.
Yeah, everybody.
Is that all of a sudden young people lost their affinity for anything ethnographic or indigenous. It was much less. They wanted, boomerang style, this or that, crazy modernism. And I've done the modernism shows for 20 years. I'm really good at that.
Yeah.
But it's very shallow, vacant for me in an aesthetic sense. And I'm always saying you can mix something from the 18th century or from the 19th century or the 20th century, and it all works together. Good design works together.
Right.
My favorite decades are the 30s and the 60s. I like decades of social upheaval. And someone came into my booth the other day and said, he was a labor lawyer, I think, who bought some interesting stuff. He said, all of your artwork looks like it has a theme, that it's kind of helping like the oppressed or the downtrodden. And I thought, wow, that's interesting that they looked at the stuff I was selling and
They can
I don't know if
say,
that's true or not, but it was something for me to consider personally.
It probably is true. It is. I mean, there's probably other things you don't even recognize, like, oh, I sure have a lot of blue and orange objects.
But don't we? There's a reason, and we've talked about this before with our childhood, why indigenous art is so important to us, and we want people to feel this connection. And maybe there's a political thing there. Maybe there could be a lot of sociological reasons, but there's definitely very, very deep reasons why we feel this work should be celebrated.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And we all have lots of Native friends, and so it's for that. I have really bright hopes for that component and what we did as our lives worked.
Exactly.
For 50 years. I'm not there yet. I still got some more to go. I haven't earned my 50-year badge.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's okay.
I hope it matches my shirt.
It's a great shirt. Anything we didn't talk about?
I think we're good.
Yeah, this is such a much more upbeat podcast than our first one. I think everyone should go listen to his first one, see what was going on in his life. Now he's gotten rid of all the things the turmoil.
It's whatever I'm feeling, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you go forth and find some great object in Tucson.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for making time for me today.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Yeah, well, we said we would do it. That's why when you walked in, I'm like, damn, how come you didn't call? And I'm thinking, I don't care. I'm just going to, I mean, that's the thing. You have to make the time.
Right.
I don't really care what else was on the schedule today. This is an opportunity. You have to be in the moment or you lose it.
Right. And I normally, it's a 3-day trip from Texas. I drive real slow. I'm a grandpa out there. People say I should be Mr. Magoo and my legs are hurting. And I left Van Horn, Texas this morning.
Oh, that's a long haul.
So, and I usually just go home. But I thought, there's too many people in Tucson like you and Terry and Mike. And it's time for me to be friendly.
Touch,
Yeah.
No, that's the most important. Cool. All right.
Thank you, buddy.
Robert Sommers. Yeah, thank you. As always, I'll see you, I'm sure this summer.
Yeah.
I'll be looking through your rug bag. I'm going to go right through. That's the first place I'm going is right into that rug bag.
Are we done now?
Are we done? I guess. Okay, we're going to cut this off right now.